Okay, welcome everyone to the last day of Volunteer Florida's Volunteer Engagement Leadership Convening. So I see a lot of familiar names. I'm so glad that you all are joining us again, and some folks who maybe haven't joined us yet. Really looking forward to this session. And so just a quick reminder, go to the networking tab on the convening platform, find people who are in your area. I hope you connect with one another. We want you all to have those relationships throughout the year so that you can encourage each other, so that you can brainstorm, so that you just know there are other people who are experiencing some of the same opportunities, innovations, challenges. We know how powerful it is to connect to one another when it comes to this profession. And then on the Media Hub tab, I haven't added much just yet, but I am planning today to add the handouts, the slides as appropriate for all of these sessions we've had, as well as resources, all of that. That's going to be available for the next month for you all. So feel free to download those details. And for people who have registered, all of that, all of those resources are going to be available, as I mentioned, throughout the next month. After that, most of the recordings are going to be available on the Volunteer Florida site, but I strongly suggest that if there are any that you have enjoyed, that you watch them in the next month again, or rewatch them here on the site. And then the handouts and some of those resources, they will not be available on the Volunteer Florida site. So you've got several weeks to pull that information. That's kind of a special component for those of you who have registered. And people can continue to register so that they can access the on-demand recordings. So feel free to let your colleagues know about that. So tremendous treat today to have my friend and colleague, Nicole R. Smith, with us today. And I am really looking forward to this session. I think it is one of those hard things that we have to talk about so that we can grow our organizations, grow ourselves personally and professionally, because there's so much about this that just has to do with relationships and communication that we can all learn from. And Nicole is a pro in so much. Good morning, Keely. Good to see you and read your text again. And feel free to share who you are and where you are in your organization. We would love to hear from you. Okay, so I want to read a little bit about Nicole to you all. She is a volunteer engagement and workforce development specialist, and her business is called Game Day Prep. She does so many things, and she does them all extremely well. So Nicole is a Panamanian American workforce development specialist, published author of Game On, Relentlessly Pursue Your Dreams, and the 101 Note-Taking Affirmation Journal series, which I have and love, and is a world-renowned motivational speaker, blogger, and podcast host of From the Suggestion Box. She earned her bachelor's degree via a Division I full-ride track scholarship, and after graduating, founded Step It Up, a nonprofit dance organization that allowed her to perform for audiences nationwide and teach dance and teamwork to kids in after-school programs. In 2021, she earned her certification in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace from the USF Muma College of Business, as well as her certification in volunteer administration. She's received several accolades, which include an Emerging Leader Award from Alive, being listed as one of WLRN's local women who inspire you, being selected as one of Legacy Miami's most prominent and influential Black women in business and industry of 2019, and a Points of Light Honor Roll honoree. She's passionate about giving back to her community and does so by sitting on the boards of the Association for Leaders in Volunteer Engagement and Ageless Chic magazine. She is a former board member of the Arts and Business Council of Miami, and that is a testament to how extraordinary Nicole is, and that does not even cover it. So you all are really in for a treat. Keely, my sister-in-law, and two nieces are Panamanian Americans. My brother is a retired U.S. Army. Got it. So you all continue to put in the chat who you are. Sharon Tatum, I see you there. Make sure that you comment. I want to see you say who you are and where you work. We would love to hear that from you. So Nicole, please go ahead and take it away. Go ahead and share your screen.
I am so thrilled and excited to be here, Jovita. Thank you so much. And also, Volunteer Florida has played such a huge role in my professional development as a volunteer manager. So every time I have an opportunity to come back and present and give back, I jump at it because they poured so much into me. And right now, as I am blossoming, these are seeds that were sown by Volunteer Florida, and now I get to give back. So very excited. I'm going to be talking today about feedback. So let me go ahead and share my screen. We want to do this here. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about feedback and how to navigate it. The good, the bad, and the say what? Those things that you look at people and like, I can't believe that really just came out of their mouth. So let's have a little talk about it. So first of all, I want to start off with the definition of feedback. It is a transmission of evaluative or corrective information about an action, event, or process to the original or controlling source. So it's basically information gathering. It's getting information back regarding something that has happened, something that was said. So today we're going to talk about how to remain emotionally intelligent and sound when receiving negative feedback from your own self, from volunteers and or colleagues, how to give feedback to volunteers and colleagues, and how to boldly and confidently receive credit, praise, and thanks. Now, let me start off by telling you feedback is not for the faint, right? But the thing is, sometimes, yes, it can be hard to digest. Sometimes it can be hard to hear. But regardless if it is good or bad, it's just like when a tree needs to be pruned to grow. And just like when a tree needs to be pruned to grow, feedback is vital to our growth. So sometimes it might hurt a little bit, but it's what we need in order to flourish. So let me start with the first poll. Who is often the most common purveyor of negative feedback? Do you think it's your colleagues, your boss, volunteers, or our own selves? Who is often the most common purveyor of negative feedback?
You all should see that to the side of your screens.
And Javita, if you just want to kind of tell me when the poll is done, because I can't see it, so
No problem.
that'd be
I can
great.
do that. All right, they're coming in. Wait just a second. All right, who is often the most common purveyor of negative feedback? All right, 82% of folks said 80% of folks said ourselves.
Yeah.
And then volunteers, bosses, and colleagues were all just one person-ish mentioned. So by far ourselves.
Yes. And that is absolutely correct. We tend to be the hardest on ourselves. But I think that's because, well, I know that's because we have a standard of excellence that we are working towards. So we want to make sure that we hold the magnifying glass up to ourselves to make sure that we are not causing undue harm or doing things in such a way that's going to negatively affect our volunteer department. But we also have to be careful of that. That's actually literally the reason why I created the journal, because we have to be careful how we are speaking to ourselves. Even if we make a mistake, even if something doesn't go right, it's not how many times it doesn't work. It's how many times we get back up. It's how many times we learn from it and adjust from it, right? So I wrote the journal to remind you that you are amazing, and challenges are a way for us to grow and changing perspective on things. So I don't want to hear people say, oh, I'm dumb or I'm stupid or I'm an idiot or none of those things. Change that language. Oh, okay, I've learned this from that mistake, or I learned how to do this, or I am valuable. I am worth being heard. Because when you believe it, that's what's going to penetrate outwards. That's what's going to give off. If you don't believe it, you can't get others to believe you if you don't believe it yourself. So just something to think about. So when talking about feedback, one of the most important important aspects of it is you have to know who you are. You have to know what your values are. You have to know what you stand for. These things are important because as we're going to talk about in a little bit, people will give you feedback based upon where they are. So some feedback that I've received, even if I didn't necessarily remember the exact moment or what was happening, I knew because it went against a core value of who I was. I was like, I could immediately just deny that one because I was like, that's not even who I am as a person. So maybe there was a perception or something that, or something happened somewhere, but I know that what they were saying wasn't true or accurate. But that was because I knew who I was. Now, believe me, I'm definitely open to things. We're going to talk about that, but it is crucial that you know who you are. So when these things come against you, you have that armor, that inner armor that you're able to fight it off. So just out of curiosity, how do you manage negative feedback? Do you stay tight-lipped because you don't want to say what you really think and you feel really frustrated because your leaky eyes betray you and people think that your feelings were hurt, but you really weren't, and that you're really, really not weak, but if they knew how much strength and restraint it took because you were utilizing all of that to hold it in before releasing the Kraken? Or were you just let it roll off like a duck's back? Do you try not to internalize it because it can be difficult? Or do you welcome it, especially if it's constructive? I got a little passionate about the first one. Sorry about that. Javita, you can just let me know.
I will. I just put in the chat, I love the way you conveyed that first one. That was perfect. And I thought about it in my head for sure. So let me make sure. Let's see. It's open. All right. We've got C and D are basically half and half, mainly C. I try not to internalize it, but it can be difficult. And then I welcome it, especially if it is constructive.
Wonderful. Those are the two that you're going for. That, I love it. It was something that I had to learn how to do because I was which is also why I was very passionate about it. I was that person who just wouldn't say anything. I would just take it. And then I'd be so upset, but I couldn't say what I really wanted to say. And then I was so upset that I started crying. And then people were like, look at this chick. And I'm like, no, I'm crying because I'm trying to hold my tongue. Because if I said what I really wanted to say, it'd be a problem. So to all of you who put C and D, kudos. Yes, congratulations, because that is where we are trying to get to. That and B, just let it not even penetrate. Okay. So let's talk about negative feedback. Some things that I want to talk about, right, is when it comes to negative feedback, consider the source. Don't take it personal, even if they're making it personal. Don't react, but respond and extract the good from it. So when I say consider the source, think about these series of questions. Does the person giving you the feedback have your best or the organization's best interest at heart? Do they have their own agenda? What do they have to gain by providing this feedback to you? Do they ever take personal responsibility? So an example was when someone offered, this is something that happened to me. Someone offered to lend me money because I was in a bit of a situation and I politely declined. And when I did that, what she said was, I was too proud. I was too proud. And I was like, no, it's not that I'm too proud because I believe in asking for help, but the value system that I operate under is never a borrower or lender be. So if I know that I'm in a position that if I don't have the money right now, and because she said, I'll borrow it, I'll lend it to you. If I know that I don't have the money now and I'm not going to be able to pay you back, I'm not going to take the money if I don't know if I can pay you back, because I don't want to be under that burden because I'm also that type of person who I'm going to keep my word. If I say I'm going to do something, then I'm going to do it. And if I'm not sure if I can do that, then I'd rather not make the promise. So after the conversation, she changed it. She was like, okay, well, then it's a gift. I will give it to you as a gift. And I was like, okay, well, I will gladly take it. But her feedback to me based on her perception was that I am too proud to take something. And it had nothing to do with that. So be aware. And a lot of times people really do, especially when the colleagues, if they have feedback that they're trying to give, it really is coming from a good place. It may not necessarily be the best, but they really might be looking out for the organization. But that's why you kind of have to sift through it and be aware of it. But sometimes one of the things that I really, really like to tell people is be cautious of criticism from someone who you wouldn't go to for advice. Now, I don't say just throw it out, but be cautious of it. Is this somebody that you would trust to go to get advice to do something? Because 9 times out of 10, then their criticism is going to fall along that same line. Again, don't throw it out, just take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. And like I said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because sometimes people will say things because they're either frustrated or they're upset. 9 times out of 10, right? Feedback will come back when they're upset and they're saying all this stuff, and great. But try to sift through it, take it, listen to it, and then get a second, a third, or fourth opinion. Ask somebody, do you find when I'm working with you, do you find this to be the case? And don't find somebody who is your 1000% advocate who's always going to be biased because you can do no wrong, because that's not what you want either. You want somebody who's going to tell you the truth, who's going to be unbiased and be like, you know what? Yes, sometimes that does happen. Or no, that's not you at all because I've worked with you or I understand you or whatever the case is. And the reason why I say to cautious is because sometimes we go into this, oh, well, if you can't come at me correct, then I don't want to hear it at all. Well, 2 people shutting down isn't going to solve a challenge. So I say, take it, dissect it. This is where you got to know who you are, put it up against your values. Maybe there's something that is challenging there. Maybe there's something that they triggered that you didn't really think about. So that's why I say, don't just throw it all out just because of how they came at you. Obviously, we want people to treat us with respect. And there's always that way to be like, when you're able to talk to me in a more professional manner, we can have this conversation later. I want to hear the feedback that you have, but perhaps we wait a little bit later to have discussion, whatever it is. But just don't necessarily, because of who it's coming from or how they came at you, don't just throw it out and deflect it 100%. There's, you can always just look through it, analyze it, and then throw it out. But just don't be so quick to do it, because some of the things that I have learned the most didn't necessarily come at me in the way that I wanted to, but they were still very, very valuable pieces of information. Try your best not to take it personal, because people tend to say unkind things when they don't understand or get their way. And this could be colleagues, especially some volunteers, because they feel they can be very vocal and just say that and feel like they can say whatever they want. But when feedback is regarding a policy, redirect their anger or frustration to the policy. I hear you. I understand. However, the policy of, well, maybe not necessarily however, because you don't want to deflect them that way, but I hear you. I understand it's valid. The policy was created in such a way to make it better for everybody involved in the organization for it to win. And there's other departments that are connected, just, whatever it is you have to do, but take it back to the policy. Sometimes people just want to be heard. They don't want an answer. They don't want a response. This program just sucks. And let me tell you why. And da, 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 da. And sometimes that's all they needed, was to be validated, to know that, okay, I understand. I hear you. And that's literally all they needed. They didn't need a solution. They just wanted an opportunity to voice the opinion, and that you were willing to listen. Again, try not to internalize it. Sometimes that can be the hardest part, but this is where you go back to knowing who you are and your values. That's your shield of understanding and how to deflect when that stuff does come. And then beware of unconscious bias. Sometimes people are giving you feedback based upon their experiences and they just don't get it. So the first thing I say is listen to it. And then, come on, slides. There we go. And then respond. Don't react. Take time to listen, because let me tell you, when people stop giving you feedback, that's when you've begun to lose the war. okay, wait, it's not necessarily like we're at war, but what I'm trying to say is we don't want people to feel like every time they come to say something to us, we react in such a way that we don't want to hear it, because then we start silencing people, and then they're not going to bring issues and challenges, and the people who really do have something to say are going to feel like they can't come to us. So first thing to do, listen. Take time to stop, think, depending on what they say, breathe, and then respond. Repeat back what you think that they heard. Make sure that you're clear on what they are saying. Depending on what it is, some responses that you can start. It's unfortunate that you feel that way. Don't apologize for something, especially if you haven't done anything wrong and it's not your fault. But there is a way to address it. I regret that you feel that way, or it's unfortunate that you feel that way, and then continue on. Thank you. This has been the golden sentence of my entire volunteer management career. Thank you. I will take that into consideration for next time. Or thank you. I will take that into consideration. They were able to express, and then really do take it into consideration. And if it's something that can be worked in, then do it. And if not, great. But at least you did your part, and you're like, I will look into it and see if it's something that we can implement. What can it hurt? Just to think it over and look to see, because it really could be a good idea. And then, like I had mentioned before, don't apologize unless it's warranted. Okay, polls. How many of you send out an annual survey that specifically asks volunteers, interns, colleagues to rate your performance as it pertains to them each year? I almost feel like I should have like Jeopardy music on, especially because I can't see the poll. So Javita, I'm relying on you.
It's really good. All right, waiting for those to come in.
Do you send
Okay.
survey?
All right, I want to hear from a couple more of you, and then we'll close this out. Okay, there we go. Okay, we are right about half and half, slightly more at 54% say sure do. High 40s, nope.
Okay. So if you are not sending out a survey, you're missing out on opportunities to grow and improve. And here's the beautiful thing about that. When you initiate it and you are proactive about it, it's a lot, I would say, almost easier to handle the feedback. Number one, because your mindset is prepped for it and it's not coming out of the blue and smacking you in the face. Secondly, a lot of times, especially, and we all know this, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but when it comes to volunteers, they vote with their feet. They may not come back and tell you anything. They're just going to stop showing up. And that's our whole retention, numbers. So it's like, why are they not coming back? What's going on? Is there something that I could have? And the thing about it is, a lot of times it's not even something that's a huge, big deal. It could be something that's super, super small. And it was just like, it just wasn't worth the effort. It wasn't that big a deal. But to us, that little big deal can cause 30 people to leave and we don't even realize it. So by putting it out there and asking, number one, you're getting the feedback. Number two, they are also feeling heard. And once you actually put something if you act on that feedback and they know that they're being heard, they're going to be more apt to tell you. And that's going to help you to grow and improve and do things like that. One of the things that I've done, especially with colleagues, is, I know it sounds really crazy, but I will ask, especially when it comes to review, colleagues that I know have an issue with me, but who have never said anything. Those are the ones who I ask, like, hey, will you speak to me? I know it sounds crazy, but hey, because my boss will be like, so name 4 or 5 people who you want to speak on your behalf of how you're doing as a manager. I ask the people who I know have issues with me, because 9 times out of 10, they don't come and tell me straightforward. But how am I going to fix things if I don't know what it is? So if I get my boss to ask, then they feel open to tell what the issues are, take what the struggles are, the challenges are. I can identify, and then I can go in and make adjustments or have a conversation with that person to say, hey, can we work through this? Because how am I going to get better if I don't know? And a lot of people, they're either uncomfortable or they don't want to have the crazy uncomfortable conversation of, oh, this is why I don't like working with you, or whatever the case is. People don't like confrontation. But if you take the proactive step of asking first or putting it out in a safe space to do so, get that feedback. I'm telling you, it's a lot easier to brace for it than for it to come and just like smack you upside the head and you don't know where it came from. You're getting ahead of it. You're being proactive. And again, like I said, I keep saying brace because sometimes it's not easy to hear. It's hard stuff to hear. However, I would rather, for the lack of better words, control that narrative than it surprise me. If I'm taking that action first, it helps. For me, it lessens the blow a little bit. So if you are doing it, continue to do it, because you will pull out so many great things. And especially because people they have a lot of great ideas, and not the feedback is not always bad. You have a lot of great things. And then that's also stuff that you can use on your review, and like, hey, so-and-so in this department, that could also help you in terms of like with your boss, if you need raises or if you need to advocate for funds for your department, whatever. You have all of that stuff. Plus, especially if it's coming for volunteers, what a great way to help to recruit new volunteers. Because if you have current volunteers singing your praises and how awesome to volunteer at the organization, that is stuff that you can use to help promote and recruit. So going back, like I said, it's important to know who you are. Because when you're going through those surveys and you're reading through, they can come at you like arrows and darts and like, whoof. But when you know who you are and you understand and you know your policies and you know like policies of the organization, you know who you are as a person, all of those things, when those things come back at you and you know that you have that shield of your values and what you stand for and all that, it just helps to minimize the blow of the crazy feedback. Okay. So I just want to give you samples of my personal negative feedback. All of this came through surveys. Nicole should get paid more. Maybe she would be nicer. The few personal contacts I've had with Nicole were very unpleasant. Her experience doesn't apply to my size group. When I asked for a modification, there wasn't an answer. Nicole takes the defensive instead of identifying what caused the issue and how to move forward. Now, out of context, all of this sounds pretty heavy hitting and pretty difficult. And part of me almost wants to go and give the other side of each one of these comments, because I'm going to tell you, the fact is, each one of these is factual. The truth is, when you look at it in context of what was happening, there's a reason why this was the feedback that happened. So there's always two sides to a story. For instance, the third one down, the person who put that feedback said that she didn't get the information, but the information that she wanted, the session wasn't about. So I was kind of like, well, but the session said this, this, and this, and you were asking for this. So that wasn't even part of the session. So context puts everything into perspective. And just because it's factual doesn't always necessarily mean that it's true. So I just want to put that out there, because sometimes when you go back and you read this, it's like, woof. And I'll be honest, being vulnerable, especially the last one, that was a hard one. I was like, oh, I don't want to put that out there, because then people are going to be like, how am I going to listen to this girl? And she's talking about giving feedback, and that's the feedback she's getting. Right? Like, it was hard. But I also have a whole slew of things that I could put with really great feedback too. But I just wanted to let you know that it's going to come, and it's going to be hard hitting, and you got to put that shield on to be ready for it. And again, don't take it personal. And how do you respond to it? 9 times out of 10, because especially if you do your surveys anonymously, or the way we do evaluations, the feedback comes anonymous. So the good thing about that is that if you don't know who said it, it's easy for you not to treat them any differently because it's general feedback and it's stuff that you can take to adjust. Depending on the seriousness of the feedback, if you don't know who said it, then that's an issue, because then you're like, how can you fix something if you don't really know who it's coming from to have that direct conversation to work things through? But there's all different ways and different scenarios when it's better to have it anonymous and when it's better to not have it anonymous, but you can use your judgment call on when those are. So let's go to giving feedback. Let's talk about the different things about giving feedback in terms of appreciation, coaching, and evaluation. So just show of hands, what is the most important aspect of giving feedback? Do you think it's honesty, remaining unemotional, or trust? What is the most important aspect of giving feedback? Honesty, remaining unemotional, or trust? How are we looking, Javita?
All right, waiting for a couple to come in. There's usually a delay. This is a good one. Interesting. Anybody else? Okay, so 42% said honesty.
Okay.
44%, 33% said trust, and 22% said remaining unemotional. So primarily honesty there. This is a good question. I'm very interested in what you have to say about this, Nicole. Right.
Well, I'll start by saying all of them are pretty crucial. But for me, the one that is the most important is trust. And the reason why is because if you are building a relationship of trust with somebody, it makes the feedback easier. It's a lot easier to be honest, and it's a lot easier to be unemotional, depending, I guess, on what it is. But it's a lot different than right now. If I had to give Javita some feedback about something, because of the relationship that we have, and she knows who I am as a person, she understands where I'm coming from. She knows where my heart is. If I were to give feedback to somebody on the call who I've never met, I could probably give the exact same feedback. And coming to Javita, it would be welcome. And coming to the person who I've never met, they'd probably be back on that margarita glass, taking it with a grain of salt. Who is this chick? I don't even know her. How she gonna walk up and just tell me about myself? Da, 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 da. Relationship is everything. And so the part about that, though, is you have to be building relationship way before you have to give the feedback. So when volunteers are coming into the organization for that first time, those hellos, those following up emails, those whatever you're doing to curate, that is when that happens. And that starts from orientation, building that relationship. So if it gets to a point that you have to give that feedback, they've already had that interaction. That's not the first time they've ever heard from you, is when you have something negative to tell them. And so I think, especially in primarily giving negative feedback, that trust and that building the relationship is the most important. When you're giving positive feedback, it's not as crucial. It's still crucial though, because you also don't want people to think you're blowing hot air up there behind, right? But when people know and have that relationship, it just makes it better from where it's coming from. Now, obviously, we can't always build a relationship with every volunteer that we have, or have that communication with every volunteer that we have. And that's understandable, because a lot of us have a lot larger, grander volunteer programs. And so then in that next vein, I would definitely say to always be honest and transparent. And even if you're not able to build like that one-on-one or have touch points, in the way that you run the program in general, people will they're still like building that relationship residually. So they will still understand, they will still have that feeling there. So even if it is the first time that they have that communication, it's still, the foundation is still already laid. So thinking of different ways of how that can happen and just making sure to, in all cases, being transparent and having that trust, building that relationship, it just makes it an easier conversation to have. Now, and when it comes to appreciation and recognition, we have to remember it's in the eye of the beholder. I'm just going to say this is her grandson was like, here, grandma, here's a pot. And grandma was like, look, I want to cruise to the Bahamas. What is this? I'm not trying to sit up here and cook for you all day. Unless it's her love language, then it would be okay. But clearly it's not hers. So thinking about when it comes to recognition and appreciation, because that is one of the grandest pieces of feedback that we can give. Think of there's like 5 different categories. I only put 4 here. Words of affirmation, it's using words to affirm people. Acts of service, because sometimes actions speak louder than words. Some people, you can tell them thank you all day, but if you do something for them, it makes them feel more appreciated. Receiving gifts, some people would rather get like a gift card or a handwritten card. Quality time, some people may just want to have like coffee, have a conversation. And I got all of these from the 5 appreciation languages in the workplace. And it's a link, and I think I stuck it in the slides that you're gonna the PDF that you're gonna get afterwards. But just being aware that when it comes time to showing appreciation as a form of feedback to say thank you, be aware that not one size fits all, and everybody is going to respond a little bit differently. And how do you find out about this? If all of our volunteers fill out an application to join our organizations, slide something in there on one of the questions on the intake that says, how do you prefer to be appreciated? Put it in there. That way, when it's your time, you don't have to guess. You don't have to figure it out. You just go, you pull up their record, and it's like, bam, I am going to give this person a personal phone call as opposed to sending a gift card. Because, some people you might send a gift card, and if that's not their love language, they're like, oh, they're trying to buy me. They're not good. I'm not good enough to just pick up the phone and say hello. I'm telling you, crazy stuff. So we just have to be aware. Coaching is another really great way to give feedback. It's a way to get people to look at the way something is being done and look for ways to do it differently or more efficiently. Letting them know that they're on the right track, giving occasional guidance. This is really great for volunteers. This is good for if you have, especially like interns. This is one of the things, like we do a midterm evaluation all the time. And in that part, we do coaching. Like, have you tried doing it this way? Or this was really great, but let's try it this way and let's see what the result is. Or that was really great. I want to integrate that into what we're doing. But coaching, giving advice, helping out. That's a really, really good way to give feedback, especially when you have really great volunteers who want to maybe take on more leadership aspects of the organization, coaching them through that. Because like one of the things that we did was we wanted to start a training team, and we had somebody who that was what they used to do in their 9 to 5 before they retired. So we coached them on how to train the volunteers within our organization. It made him feel empowered. And then we brought on another whole group of training. So we ended up having a training team who was training our new volunteers that were coming in to help us to create more opportunities for new volunteer orientations. And it empowered them. It was using their skills, and it helped them to connect with the newer volunteers. There was just so much good that came out of it through that coaching aspect of this is how we just need it to happen, go for it. And then they were also able to put their input to help create the program. So it was just a win-win-win-win-win. And then, like I had mentioned, doing evaluations. I know some organizations give evaluations on every volunteer. That is one option. I know specifically, I had mentioned a little bit earlier, with our interns, we do a midterm evaluation, and we go through, and that's a perfect time to be like, these are all the things that you're doing great. These are the areas of improvement. Let's work to see how we can get them to improve. And it could even just be maybe lack of opportunity to even put specific skill sets into practice. So let's adjust so that you're able to do that, to make sure that you're getting out of this experience what you came in for. And it can be the same for volunteers, because you all know if they're not operating and where they want to be and what they came into the organization to do, they're going to leave. So have that conversation, create evaluations, however you want to think about it, but just be thinking it's just another really great way to give feedback. So I want to challenge you all, because we hear this often about difficult conversations. Well, my good friend Barry Altland said that there's no such thing as a difficult conversation. He says that it's only difficult based upon how you perceive it, because all of it is information and all of it is feedback. So there is a link to my podcast for you all to listen to that. So when it gets to the point where you do have to give feedback and it does have to be a difficult conversation, I challenge you to listen to this and get his perspective on it. And because he has some really, really great tips on it. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. Okay. So how do you manage positive feedback? Do you accept it graciously? Do you deflect? Does it make you nervous? Or you're like, I don't like it, I feel weird? When it comes to managing positive feedback, this is something that often a lot of us don't even really think about. But when it comes to managing positive feedback, how do you feel? Do you accept it? Do you deflect? It makes you nervous, or you just don't like it? You feel weird? How are we looking, Jovita?
There was a little delay. So
Okay.
let's see what we've got here. How do you manage positive feedback? Interesting. Let's wait for one or two other people. Okay, perfect. All right. So most of our folks accept it graciously. That's 73%, 20%,
Wow.
20% deflect, and 7% it makes them nervous.
That's great. All right. Good crowd. I have always been like, D, I don't like it. It makes me feel weird. I don't want it. And then after having this conversation with my good friend, Karina Sadler, she kind of got me out of that. And she was like, Nicole, when people give you positive feedback, just say thank you. Let me tell you, sometimes it's the two hardest words that I'd ever want to say, because I'll be like, oh, well, it wasn't just me, or I had to do all this stuff, or, oh my gosh, you didn't know everything I had to go through in order to get it done. She was like, just stop all the commentary. Just say thank you. Somebody took out the time to give you a compliment. Just say thank you. I still have trouble doing it, but that's why I wanted you to get the advice from Karina, because she's excellent at it. Podcast episode in there. Take a listen. But to those of you who accept it graciously, then awesome, because you are 10 steps ahead of me. I'm working to get there, and not accepting it and deflecting it at the same time. And one of the biggest reasons for that too is somebody takes the time to give you a compliment. Number one, own it, and it's okay. And then remember, it's okay to like how you feel about yourself, but you also don't want to give the impression that like you're like, oh no. Because now people are like, my compliment wasn't good enough for you. Like, fine, I'll keep it to myself next time. Like, like if somebody took the time out, that meant there was something about whatever you did that resonated with them, and they wanted to let you know that it did. So just take it. And I feel like because so many of you all like voted so highly, I almost feel like I'm talking to myself right now. But just say thank you and be done. And it's okay. And all that commentary can stay back here and allow, because half the time too, people are just trying to give you the compliment and walk out the room. And you're like, oh, no. They're like, I gotta go. Just thank you. It was great. Bye. Or that project that you worked on, or the impact that you had. Just try to sit in it. And again, I feel like I'm talking more to myself than you all, because you all are way ahead of me. So with all of that being said, in review for today, when we're talking about feedback, receiving it and giving it, right? Remaining emotionally intelligent and sound, especially when receiving negative feedback from whoever it's coming from, yourself, volunteers, colleagues, making sure to give effective feedback to volunteers and colleagues, and not even necessarily, oh, great job. Like, be specific. When you did this, it had this much impact, and thank you for that. When you did this, and it did this, it had this impact. So we really need to work through how are we going to do this differently, because we don't want to impact so and so in such a way. And then boldly and confidently receive the credit and the praise and thanks, because you know what? In honor of International Volunteer Manager Day that's coming up on the 5th, you wear so many hats. You do so many things. You're the recruiter, you're the trainer, you're the referee, you're the encourager, you're the HR person, you're the matchmaker, you're air traffic control, you're the conductor. You are doing so much, and you receive the credit. And often the volunteer manager, the person who's leading the volunteers, is overlooked. So on this particular day, and since we're talking about positive feedback, I want to say I see you and I hear what you're doing in your organizations. But as a volunteer manager, I see you. I know what you're doing. I know you are doing a phenomenal job. Keep your head up. Be encouraged. And on International Volunteer Managers Day, I just want to say cheers to you, and just keep doing what you're doing. So with that being said, I just want to throw out this slide. If you want to connect with me, you connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the fastest way to connect with me, or you can send me an email. And if you go to my website today and register to be a part of my mailing list, I'm going to actually be pulling somebody and raffling off one of the journals. But I am done. And if we have time for questions, Javita, right?
We absolutely do. And I would love to hear any questions or even comments. I saw, Kevin said, I deflect and credit my team as a whole. And I said, Kevin, that's great, but save a bit of that credit for yourself too. Even if it's internally, it would be my suggestion. So even if it's a comment, we'd love to hear from you. What you thought about what Nicole said, whether it encouraged you personally or someone else. And Nicole, what you were talking about, I was thinking about when I give a compliment to someone and they spend the whole time deflecting or being dismissive of it, exactly what you said, where I get, it's almost a little wearing to do that, and I walk away without that sense of connection that I was looking for, because I wanted to say something meaningful. So totally thinking about it and putting yourself in the other person's shoes, that helps me a lot too, to think about how I feel.
And you also don't want to discredit yourself. Whatever you got that compliment for, you worked hard and you put a lot of time into it. So don't discredit your own self. We have enough people discrediting us and taking for granted what we're doing. So, and a lot of that is because of we do our job so well, we make it look easy. So somebody gives you the compliment, take it, because people are like, oh, well, that's why they're like, oh, well, can you just get me, like 30 volunteers for the event that we have tomorrow? I mean, I can do it. And I'm going to, and they're going to show up and they're going to be amazing. And then thank you. Oh, well, no. As a matter of fact, no, I'm just kidding. I'm back. I went somewhere, but I am back. But yes. I am open to any feedback about this whole presentation. Obviously, some of it you may agree with, some of it you may not. I hope that there's nuggets that you can take. A lot of this is just sharing from my own personal experiences, things that I have experienced and went through, and how I have come up with solutions to overcome the challenges. So if there's other suggestions that people may have that differ, please drop it in the chat, because I am open to the feedback. Believe me, I got my shield on, so I'm ready for it.
Oh, this is great. And even the feedback information can be so helpful. Nicole, will you put your email address in the chat?
Sure.
Somebody's asking about that. Even when you're making the pitch for, even it could be more resources to your bosses, other things in your organization, when you have a story to tell based on feedback, that can be really helpful, because you may need to hear from, your boss may say, is this really going as well as you say it is? You actually have those details that you're able to share with people. I think there's a question for you, Nicole.
Okay, yes, it says, do you have suggestions on how to handle feedback from a volunteer who may be frustrated with an outside agency who is a partner with us. How should I go about handling that? I would definitely, like I had said, listen, don't badmouth the partner. Take the feedback, understand where they're coming from, like get examples of the experiences, and then tell them, you know what, I'm going to reach out to the agency and see if this is something that we can fix or how we can operate through this, and become the conduit for that person. So then have the conversation with the agency and try to find out, because this person might be giving you feedback about that agency, but how do we know that the volunteer may not have done something that they were supposed to do that caused that feedback to be crazy because the agency did, you know, you want to make sure that you are getting both sides of the story. But being that person to say, hey, yes, I'm listening, I'm hearing that, man, that okay, let me see what I can do about that. Then reach out to the agency and try to see if you can get to the bottom of it and go from there. So that would be the first thing that I would say. And then if it's an agency in such a way that you partner, but you're not very connected, encourage the volunteer to have the conversation with the agency if it's appropriate and if it makes sense. Because sometimes, you know, obviously you don't want volunteers talking to like program people, because whatever that could look like. But I hope that makes sense. Did that help? Because I'm not understanding the whole context of it. It's a little bit difficult to answer the question, but just based upon what I'm understanding, that would be the suggestion that I would give.
I think those are great points, Nicole. And Kelsey can bond with you with your email address there. And then yeah. I think Lilybeth had something, or it might just be a comment.
Let me see. They're moving. Okay, let me see. We've been discussing starting surveys after volunteer event, and I feel a bit better about. Oh yes, do that. You know, there was somebody, a colleague of mine, who, especially after their volunteer event, they asked, and people were like, "We would have rather had a picnic than what we had." So the next year, they changed the type of event that they had. Because they were like, how come people didn't come out? Well, because it's not what they wanted. So get that survey in. And be ready for the floodgates. Because let me tell you, people are silent. And then if you ask them, sometimes you're like, why did I ask? But it's always better to ask. But I'm telling you, just put your shield on and get ready. Like I said, it's not for the faint. It is not for the faint.
Strengthen up. But it's good. It's good professional exposure and stretching and growth for you and for those folks who are getting a chance to have that, give that feedback. All right, John had something he said.
Yes. Any suggestions regarding details of what to ask my volunteers about and requesting their feedback? Like, am I being prompt enough in replying, or do I offer enough opportunities, or do you just no? I would say those are perfect. Ask specifically what you want to know. Do I reply fast enough? Do I reply too often? Or how often would you prefer that I mean, you don't have to ask it all three ways, but if there's specific, ask that specific thing. Because also too, if you're just like, how's everything going? People will be like, oh, it's fine. It's good. Like that's also a waste of everybody's time. That's not what you want. I often will do a survey and where there's like multiple questions, like, how were you treated by the volunteer manager? Great. Wonderful. It was left to be desired, whatever. And then put in the box at the bottom where they can type in, but be very specific about the information that you want to know, because if people are going to take their time to fill it out, you want to make sure that it's beneficial to you by the time you get it. Because you don't want a whole thing being a whole survey of, oh, it's great. Because that was like, what you going to do with that? Like, that doesn't tell you anything, right? So I would be specific. I mean, I'm trying to think of ideas of whatever it is. Like, I mean, do you guys want to change the colors of the napkins? I mean, just like sometimes I know I'm being a little extreme, but I guess you get my point. I'm rambling, so I'll stop.
No, you're good. And I will put in the resources. I had something I was doing this summer, and people were asking some about that. And then there are a couple of exit interview resources that I have online that have some good questions that you could utilize for feedback. So I will post those in the Media Hub in the next day or two as well. Okay, I think we are ready to wrap up. Nicole, don't go. Don't leave. Well, thank you guys for the feedback. I'm glad that you've enjoyed the session. I knew that you would. Please join us for our keynote at 2:00, especially if you want one of those Volunteer Pro memberships or live memberships. That's one of the that's the last session that we need you to attend. And then Beth Steinhorn is back this afternoon at 3:00. And so I really encourage you to go to those last two convening sessions just to kind of support what we're doing, and also because I think it's beneficial. And a special thank you to you, Nicole. You are extraordinary, and I am just so honored and glad that we had a chance to speak with you. And thanks for the participation of the attendees. So we're going to go ahead and finish up. Anything you want to say last words?
Yes, last words. I want to say thank you so much. It was an honor. And to all of those who were helping with all of the efforts with Hurricane Ian and all of the things that you were doing to support, I just want to thank you. I myself am here in Orlando, so we were a little bit touched by it. And I know a lot of you all have been working tirelessly, including you, Javita, trying to pull this off in the middle of all of that. So thank you for all that you all are doing, and just keep your head up. Keep your head up as you're going through.
Thank you. And you too, Nicole. Thank you guys so much. Y'all take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.